In the meantime, let's get started. The Immigration Reform Law Institute is an organization that gets involved, as it says, in litigation. And what it does is to try to protect you and me from onerous immigration policies such as those of the Barack Obama 8 years, where basically the tail wagged the dog. Anybody could walk into this country who wanted to. People, as you know, like the Kate Steinle case, a guy is kicked out 5 times, comes back. San Francisco refuses to hold him for ICE when they made the request. They let him out. He goes and shoots and kills 32-year-old Kate Steinle in the presence of her father. How much more horrifying can one's life experience be than that for her father? Chris Hajec is Director of Litigation for this organization. Mr. Hajec, how are you? Good to talk to you. Do we have Mr. Hajec with us? Oh, here we go. Mr. Hajec, are you with us?
Yes.
There we go. Sorry about that. Let's get right to it because, let's start with that case. Why can't we prosecute the sheriff in San Francisco who refused to release or hold this fellow for ICE as basically involved in being an accessory to murder? Or for that matter, the mayor and the sanctuary city policy? Is there any criminal charge that can be brought in any of these cases against these lunatics who protect thugs and debased criminals at the expense of decent human beings?
There has been a lawsuit by Kate Steinle's family, but it wasn't successful because generally the idea is that if you create a dangerous situation in your city, if you're law enforcement and you allow a dangerous situation, everybody is a potential victim. And in order to be able to sue, you have to have a particular harm that comes to you, not just a harm as a member of the public. Now, I don't think that's right. I think that if the sheriff or the mayor of San Francisco were shooting guns up into the air and it was random where the bullets would come down, they could still be prosecuted for attempted murder or murder if somebody died. And
the real point here is that if somebody houses a criminal in the private sector, I have a guy who committed rape, whatever it may be, and I protect him from the police, and they come to my door and I say I don't have him here, or I'm not going to release him, or take some position to protect that criminal. And this guy was already a criminal 5 times because of being kicked out of the country 5 times and coming back 5 times illegally. I'd be in the hoosgow. Obstruction of justice, accessory to the crime if I was involved in that part of it. There would be criminal action against me. And yet these cities and mayors and sheriffs get away literally with murder. Or am I overstating it?
No, you're not overstating it, and it's incredible how they go to bat for the right to let dangerous criminals back on the streets. I mean, when ICE issues a detainer request, it's somebody that they're holding in custody because they've committed a crime, and they're serving their sentence, and ICE just wants to deport them at the end of it. And these are known criminals. These jurisdictions go to court to make sure that they can release them back onto the streets. And by the way, it's very rare for sheriffs to do this because, though there are exceptions, because they're responsible to the voters directly. They're elected officials. And it's not a good platform, letting dangerous criminals back on the street instead of deporting them. The obstruction of justice is a definite legal theory that would have to be pursued by the Justice Department, not by private litigants.
I understand, but I think it should be, is my point. And there's been talk that these mayors in these sanctuary cities could ultimately be prosecuted. Is in your mind, you're an expert attorney in this field, is under present law, is that possible?
It's possible. It depends on an interpretation of a certain federal statute that courts have previously found to be vague. What does the exact phrase is that they're inducing illegal aliens to come into the country. What does that mean? Or under that provision, these sanctuary policies could be, and those who implement them could be gone after. But it also has, there are free speech aspects to that. Politicians can advocate all kinds of different policies, and they can't be punished for doing so. And if some of their speeches make illegal aliens want to come to their city, there would be First Amendment problems with prosecuting them for that.
Right. Well, then let's turn to the area. I'm bringing these up because these are serious immigration problems, and we have a guy who came in and now killed 8 people. We had Tafshin Malik with her husband in San Bernardino, killed 14. Omar Mateen was here, but family came from the Middle East. He killed 49 in Orlando. The Tsarnaev brothers, the older brother went back to Chechnya, basically learned how to do a pipe bomb, and went to an extremist mosque. We now find out this fellow was going to a mosque. We find out that the New York City Anti-terrorism Task Force, which de Blasio, in his idiocy, canceled, eliminated, they were actually looking into that particular mosque in Paterson, New Jersey, because that was where this guy attended, and that mosque was under surveillance. So there was extremism going on in that mosque. And now that, of course, that's gone. But this guy, and I'm told he was not radicalized here because his family was radical from Uzbekistan anyway. And as a child he was indoctrinated, who knows. But what can we do about the area of legally, if we can, going after undercover attendance at these mosques that are suspected of being radical areas of indoctrinating people to go out and do these acts? Can we have officers, FBI, local police go in undercover?
Yeah, certainly. Anybody can go into, I don't think New York State has laws against recording people without their knowledge. And certainly there's nothing wrong with going in with a notebook.
Right.
No law against that. And that would also apply to federal or state agents who could go in and, be undercover informants or actually agents of the FBI and see what's said in those mosques and get involved in the groups that the smaller groups that form within it and for various purposes. And I mean that's justifiable, and I assume they're doing that. They've done it to some extent in this mosque, or they had before.
Right.
And apparently one of his co-attendees at this mosque said that he fully got where he was coming from. He understood he totally understood his action, which indicates some degree of sympathy, at least among people at that mosque, with terrorism.
Yeah, exactly. In other words, the guy who attended was sympathetic with this murderer yesterday or 2 days ago, and that's absolutely the case. That there's sympathy inside of that mosque, and there are many other mosques doing the same thing. So then what you're saying is it's a matter of policy. In other words, under Giuliani and also under Bloomberg, who's actually more on the liberal side, but he continued that program. He continued the stop and frisk. De Blasio eliminated stop and frisk and eliminated the task force going and surveilling these mosques. So it's not a matter of law, it's a matter of policy that the people like de Blasio, who's fundamentally a communist anyway because he helped the Sandinistas when they took power in Nicaragua, he went down there and worked with them. De Blasio, by his own choice, has protected these mosques from legitimate surveillance. Am I correct?
Yes, and he stopped stop and frisk and other crime control policies. His goal seems to be to make crime go up, which it is going up. And and now he's made terrorism go up again.
What about the issue of the visa? We keep hearing about diversity visas, a lottery system. It's randomly done, picking numbers, and whoever happened to have that number is the one who gets into the country. The other side is making the argument that even if you get the number, you still have to be vetted. You don't just come into the country unvetted. So eliminating those visas would not be any different than having those visas, because those people are vetted anyway. What do you make of that?
Well, there's also been widespread fraud in that program, and often a difficulty in really vetting somebody because the record-keeping capacity of the country they're from is very poor and unreliable. Some of them lack the ability to get on the internet and apply for this, so they have agents in the U.S. do it, and then those agents exploit them and make them get involved in various kinds of fraud. So they're vetted, but also vetting can't necessarily catch everything. It just can't.
Yeah, Uzbekistan was part of the Soviet Union. Who knows what their records are at this point?
Yeah, and it was part of the Soviet Union, and it's a hotbed for
terrorism.
Terrorism, in part because I think the Soviets repressed religion in general and Islam, and they in response to that, became radicalized.
Let me ask you this, because in the Tafshin Malik case, she was in Pakistan. She was writing on her social media about being radicalized and being a jihadist. Who knows if she was radicalized? She may have always been that way, but she was attending extremist mosques. She was dealing with the jihadist philosophy, such as it is, barbaric philosophy, and was writing about it. It was after that she gets into this country and winds up killing 14 people with her husband in San Bernardino. Now, there was actually a memo under Barack Obama, which, of course, was an attempt by Obama, in my opinion, to destroy this country's fabric with a lot of policies, which we can't get into here with no time. But this was one, because the Secretary of Homeland Security actually put out a memo that his analysts at Homeland Security could not look at the social media of people outside the country to judge them, because that was a matter of free speech and protected speech and privacy.
That is complete nonsense. They certainly don't have a right under the First Amendment, and anybody can look at social media. That's not you're not violating anyone's rights by reading what they say on social media.
Yeah, exactly. But that's what that department did. Jeh Johnson wrote the memo. It came out publicly. Somebody leaked it. Talk about leaking problems. That was one. And it's astonishing that, in other words, we're laying out the carpet for people to come in. Well, of course, the other part of it was that, as you may know, in southern Arizona, there was a big billboard put up by a department of the federal government, which the Bureau of Land Management. And I don't have the exact wording, but it said basically, this is a dangerous area. Americans should stay away. In other words, abdicating our sovereign land to the Sinaloa cartel, which crossed regularly into that area. Those policies are going to be. Could there be lawsuits on some of these things that have happened from organizations such as yours to require government officials to do the job they're supposed to do to protect the American people, which is the number one job?
Well, we're considering lawsuits like that, including in California, which has just declared itself a sanctuary state, along with Illinois. Illinois' nominally Republican governor signed a draconian sanctuary state law.
Amazing.
Saying that the local police could not inform ICE, even if asked, of the release dates of people they were holding who were illegally in the country.
Why would, if these are criminals that ICE is looking for, what's the motivation? I mean, the only thing I can think of, and it's usually Democrats who want these people protected because they're going to be voters, and because they're in the lower economic classes, they'll vote for Democrats down the road, either illegally or when they become citizens. So, but why would, other than that, what's the reason to do this? It puts everybody at risk. If somebody gets, in Chicago, for example, you talk about Illinois, Rahm Emanuel, how many African Americans have been killed by illegal aliens? And those African American families should skewer Rahm Emanuel for that policy, because he's responsible for the illegal aliens being protected who are criminals. And I'm not talking about just being here illegally. I'm talking about criminals committing violent crimes who are being protected.
Yes, they seem to want to protect them just as much as anybody else. And it does seem a terrible election campaign platform, for re-election. I protected the illegal alien criminal. I stopped them from being deported. And many of them do vote. I just attended a lunch, actually, today in D.C. Held by the Remembrance Project, and one of our council's, Kris Kobach, spoke there. He's running for governor of Kansas now. And he also chairs the President's Commission on Voter Fraud. And either he or Representative Steve King, who was also there, estimated that, it was Chris. He estimated that, I believe, 1 million aliens, not necessarily, illegal and legal, illegally voted in the last election. That seems a pretty good estimate. That's a ton of votes.
You're not kidding. And it's
something tells me they weren't voting for Donald Trump. So it may have cost him the popular vote, which he narrowly lost.
Well, he lost the popular vote in California and New York, which are left-wing states anyway. I want to close out here by reading to you, for the audience's sake, you already know this, Title 8, Section 1325 of the U.S. Code. Any alien who, 1, enters or attempts to enter the United States at any time or place other than as designated by immigration officers, or 2, eludes examination or inspection by immigration officers, or 3, attempts to enter or obtains entry to the United States by a willfully false or misleading representation, or the willful concealment of a material fact, shall for the first commission of any such offense be fined under Title 18, or imprisoned not more than 6 months, or both, and for a subsequent commission of any such offense be fined under Title 18 or imprisoned not more than 2 years or both. I read that as being a misdemeanor on the first offense and a felony on the second offense. Is that correct?
Yes.
So we have the law. Nobody's carrying it out, though, are they?
Well, it's called prosecutorial discretion.
I know.
I would like to believe that changes in policies will make a big difference, and I think they will. I think the immigration crisis and illegal and legal is largely the result of government policy, and changing that policy will help a great deal.
Mr. Hajec, it's a pleasure to have you here. I thank you. You've been giving us a lot of insight into this issue, and I appreciate your time today.
Thank you very much.
Have a good day, sir. Kris Hajec, and appreciate his time. He's with he is Director of Litigation, Immigration Reform Law Institute. Mike Siegel in for Tom Bowerly. Good to have you here at News Radio 930 WBEN. Stay with us.